Hey everyone, this is Dan from MFile, and today we're going to be trying to teach you all the basic foundations of music theory in less than 30 minutes. This is going to move fast, but hopefully we can get some of the fundamental concepts under your belt, and by the end, you're going to be thinking, what the hell was I so scared of? Why did I let music theory be such an obstacle in my songwriting and my progressing in my playing? Essentially, when I was first writing out all the information for this video, this was going to be one of the initial course offerings on the website. When I got to the end, I realized that this is the cornerstone of the foundation. This stuff lays the base for everything that I want to be teaching. All of this stuff is introductory. Things get so much crazier after this. That's the stuff that I want to get to. That's the meat and potatoes, and that's where my passion is, talking about advanced music theory and talking about concepts that can help you in your playing and your songwriting. The whole point of MFile is to transform you as an artist, a musician, a songwriter. We want to see you change into something completely different. I don't want you learning a couple of musical notes and going back to the same songs that you felt stuck with to begin with. You want to make progress. That's why you're here. Let's get to learning. If you want to learn more about music theory, chord progressions, maybe you want some more in-depth personal training, you can apply for a mentorship on the MFile site. We've got a link in the description below. Basically, music theory is as much of a language used to communicate and express ideas as your native tongue that you are comfortable speaking. You talk without having to think, so music theory can also be internalized like this. You express yourself freely. You use your words to communicate abstract ideas and get that message across to somebody else. And when you are understood, that feels good. The concepts of music theory can help you do this as well. It may seem like a huge obstacle now, but so was saying anything but gibberish when you were a toddler. And look how well most of you turned out. Yeah, there's a solid percentage of you out there that are doing okay. There's a good chance if you're watching this, you're struggling with music theory. And that's okay. It doesn't have to make you feel dumb. I did not like music theory when I first started, but the benefits are that you can walk into any musical situation and know exactly what to do as easily as if you were having a conversation and deftly explaining your ideas and your positions. It feels great. You don't have to be that person on the sidelines feeling like a wallflower at a party while everyone else is talking about the things they're passionate about and you get left out. You can join in the conversation, and not only that, you can take the lead when it's your time to express your ideas, get your thoughts heard, get your emotions felt and understood. It's some investment of time and effort now, but what you get is a lifetime of being knowledgeable in the musical language. Learning happens fast, but only if it's done correctly. And we can use our foundations in what we already know to figure out all the stuff later that we don't yet. So let's get started. What is a note? A note is just sound vibrations. A fast vibration means a tighter sound wave, which means a higher pitched note. A slow vibration means a wider sound wave, which is a lower pitched note. Guitar is a great example of this because you can physically see the strings vibrating as they make sound. You see that shit? It's this vibration that is producing the sound. And the rate of that vibration, the sound frequency, is what's creating the pitch that we hear in our ear. In Western music, we have a system organized on 12 notes. Other systems exist, and they're all well and good. We're just focusing on the Western system of tonal organization. Just these 12 notes and how they interact with each other. All the Western music that you hear, all the stuff that you're familiar with, uses this system of 12 notes. This is because these specific frequencies interact with each other in just the right way. If you really want to go nerd out about all the science and math that's behind how this works, there's so many articles and so much research done on all of this. You can actually look up the ratio that's used to determine how we organize our note system. These fundamental principles of music theory are based on legit science that actually organizes it in a way that makes it sound pleasing. To help us identify these notes a lot easier, we've use letters from the alphabet to name them, starting at A through G and then repeating again at A. The keyboard is a really great visual tool for seeing how this is all laid out. White keys are the notes with letter names A through G. Black keys are named based on which white key they are sitting beside, with a sharp or a flat. Sharp means raised or higher. Flat just means lower. Here we have an A. The next white key is a D. The black key in the middle is A sharp. It is a half step higher than A. In some situations, it can be called D flat because it's a step lower. It's very silly. It's unnecessarily complicated, but it makes a lot more sense as you get used to it. It's like making a joke and then putting the context to that joke, making the joke a bit funnier. I mentioned our music system being based on 12 notes. So why is my guitar littered with frets? Touching on the science part of sound again, if we play this C and this higher C, we can hear that they're related. A higher note is vibrating twice as fast as the lower note, and our ear can identify that. This relation is called an octave. Same note name, one is higher pitched, vibrating twice as fast as the lower one. Moving from C to a higher C is an octave, but we mentioned that there were 12 notes we can play. Moving in one of those increments of 12 notes from C to C sharp is called a half step, a semitone. It's the smallest step that you can make in the organization of Western music. A semitone or a half step is moving up or down one fret on the guitar, or on the keyboard, a white key to a black key. In the system of 12 notes, moving in two of those increments is called a whole step, a whole tone, a tone. We go from C to D. It's from one dotted fret on the guitar to another, or one black key to another black key on the keyboard. You may have heard of the term keys used in music before, like someone asking what key a song is in. When used in this way, it's referring to a grouping of notes that sound good when they're used together. Most songs that you hear will have just one key. Some jazz songs will change keys like 4 times every 2 bars. Looking at you, giant steps. When talking about a key or a key signature in music, it will take one of each letter named note. So the key of C major has C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then it starts over again. A different key might have different sharps or flats in it, but there will always be 7 notes before repeating at the octave. The key of G major has G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp. The key of C minor has C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat. So we have our notes of a key like C major. If we play the notes in that key in order, we get the C major scale. The key is our reference point. It's like our home base. It tells us what notes are okay to use. The scale is kind of interchangeable with that. It's the same thing, except that the scale is those notes organized in an orderly pattern. Sometimes the scale can change some of those notes or play around with which ones are added or dropped just to get different sounds. Pentatonic scale patterns and blues scale patterns do this. Again, they're based off the key, but changing some of the notes around just for an effect. All notes in the key of C are meant to be heard in how they relate to that note of C. This note is called the tonic. We move up the scale using the notes in the key in the order that they appear. The notes in the major scale are spaced whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. This is the pattern that you can use to build a major scale in any key. If you move in this pattern but start on G, you will have a G major scale. So try practicing this. Practice starting from any note and moving in this set scale pattern. So now we move to scale degrees. This, I cannot stress this enough, this is one of the most important foundations in music theory that you can learn and build on. I see so many things that try and teach concepts or basic music theory or even what you need to know and not know, and they don't talk about this, and it's ridiculous because this creates a foundation for understanding everything. Using scale degrees is like a Rosetta Stone. If we want to talk about scales in general, it can get confusing very quickly if we just reference note names and different keys only. Each note in the scale can be referenced by the number order that it appears in the scale. C is our tonic, that's 1. D is our second scale degree. E is our third. F is our 4th, G is our 5th, A is our 6th, and B is our 7th. This is so helpful, especially when we get further down the line and we start talking about adjusting certain notes in the scale with sharps or flats. Even more important, we're going to start looking at certain functions or jobs that can be assigned to notes and chords based on their scale degree. This concept can change your music, your entire study of music, change your understanding. All right, we've talked about keys and we've talked about building a major scale from that key. Let's get into building some chords. 3 or more notes played together simultaneously. Different chords are just different combinations of notes. The combination of notes and how they react with each other is all dependent on which ones you decide to throw in there. If we take the notes from the key of C major and just grab a handful of them, play them all at once, it's some variation of a chord in that key. Our most basic chord is called a triad. 3 notes, 1, 2, 3. These notes work together in a very specific way based on the distances they are away from each other. A triad is built on a pattern of 1, 3, 5. So let's take a look at this. We pick our note to build the chord off of. So we'll use C. Our first note is the root of the chord. The third note is E, and the 5th of the chord is G. Triads are built off of every other note, so you skip the note in the scale beside it. It's kind of like giving each note a bit of room to breathe and make their vibration more clear. If we take this triad pattern of 1, 3, 5 and move it to another note on the scale, we get another chord that's still in that key. So let's build a triad with G as the root, B as the third, and D as the 5th. The root of the chord is G. It's in the key of C. It's built from the notes of the C major scale. Just because we've moved the root of the chord doesn't mean anything else has changed. C is still the tonic. It's still the key that we are in. Now, here's where that scale degree stuff from earlier really comes in handy. So our chord has G as the root. This is the 5th note in the C major scale. So it's the 5 chord in C major. Since we've established the key as being C major, playing the G triad has implications because of how those notes relate to the key center of C. The notes of the G triad are G, the root, B, the third, and D, the 5th. But let's look at the scale degrees of these notes. In the key of C major, G is the 5th scale degree, B is the 7th scale degree, and D is the 2nd scale degree. So not only are we hearing the reaction of those notes to each other in the chord itself, but we are also hearing those notes in relation to what key we are in. This is the same as taking a string of words and then giving it more context by putting it in a sentence. Now, don't worry if your head is spinning a little bit. This all gets easier with time. You fell the first time you tried to walk, but look at you now, gliding the sidewalks with all the deftness of an Olympic speed walker. Ooh, dem hips. Now we talk about the different types of chords that we can make. The triad we made in the key of C major, starting on C, E, G, is a major chord. If we play a triad starting on D, F, A, we get a minor chord. So a major chord sounds a little brighter, and a minor chord sounds a little bit darker. Let's look at the pattern of semitones that actually makes these chords. For a C major triad, we have C as the root. We move 4 semitones to E, our major third. And then we move 3 semitones from there to G, our 5th. So the pattern for a major triad from the root is 4-3. Remember, on the guitar, semitones are the same as 1 fret. For D minor, we have D as the root. We move 3 semitones from there to F, our minor third, and we move 4 semitones from there to A, our 5th. The pattern for a minor triad from the root is 3-4. If we make triads for every note in the C major scale, this is what we end up with. 1 C major, 2 D minor, 3 E minor, 4 F major, 5 G major, 6 A minor, and then we get this guy, 7 B diminished. We mostly have major or minor chords, but on the 7th scale degree, we get a diminished chord. For B diminished, we have B as the root. We move 3 semitones to D, our minor third, and then we move 3 semitones again to F, our diminished 5th. The pattern for this diminished triad from the root is 3-3. In this relationship between the root and a diminished 5th or a flat 5th interval, it gives it this kind of unbalanced sound. It sounds almost like the chord's gonna fall over. But don't forget, if the chord by itself sounds off to you, think about how important context can be when making sense of something. Dissonant chords have their place just as much as consonant ones do. Just like our chords being either major or minor, our scales can also be classified as either major or minor. They're 2 completely different scales, but they're actually a lot more closely related than you might think. In the key of C, our scale is the C major scale. But if we take that scale pattern and play it starting from the A, B, C, D, E, F, G is a minor scale. It can go by 2 different names. The scale itself is called the natural minor scale because it's naturally occurring in the key of C major. It's also known as relative minor because it's closely related to the key of C major. If we look at the key of C, A is on the 6th scale degree. So in any given key, the major scale occurs on the root or 1st scale degree, and the relative minor occurs on the 6th scale degree. Now, thinking about this on the guitar fretboard, we have the C major scale, but we can also play the A natural minor scale, and this is all in the same key. So learning more parts of the scale like this and visualizing it helps you see larger portions of the guitar fretboard. In the key of C major, if we build triads on every note in the scale, we end up with a pattern of major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. Here's another awesome example of how knowing and using scale degrees can totally save your life. We can represent the chords of a scale using Roman numerals for the number of their scale degree. The chords of a major key are 1 major, 2 minor, 3 minor, 4 major, 5 major, 6 minor, and 7 diminished. Let's take a look at a specific chord progression like 1 major, 6 minor, 4 major, 5 major. If we were in the key of C major, 1 is C major, 6 is A minor, 4 is F major, and 5 is G major. What do we need to do if we were to change that progression to the key of G major? Since we know the scale degrees, we have the formula, so we can just plug the notes in from a different key. The 1, 6 minor, 4, 5 in the key of G major. 1 is G major, 6 is E minor, 4 is C major, and 5 is D major. We got the same feeling and sound out of the chord progression, but we transplanted it easily into a different key because we know a little bit about scale degrees and chord function. Now, some of the same chords will exist in both keys, but dependent on what key we are in, they will function differently. A G major chord moving to C major will function differently if it's a 1 to 4 movement in the key of G or a 5 to 1 movement in the key of C. Now, knowing this, you can start to analyze a bunch of your favorite songs and even replicate chord progressions and movement that you like or want to experiment with. You can build on it, change it so much more easily if you start thinking about it with this type of system. If you're interested in a resource that gives you a ton of different numbered chord progression formulas, there's a link in the description below. 100 plus chord progression formulas, 148 chord progressions in major and minor keys, and they're all written out with scale degrees so you can transplant them very easily into any key. Start writing and playing and use it as a prompt to get your songwriting started. Thinking about numbers and scale degrees instead of notes, roots, key signatures, whatever, it allows you to cut out all the extra details and just focus on what is happening. Now you can think about music much more clearly. How a 5 chord functions and how a 2 chord sounds moving to a 4 chord is going to sound the same in all of the major keys. By this point, you're using all of the music theory knowledge that you've learned up to now. It's cumulative. It's a snowball rolling down the hill and building. Try picking out a random bunch of numbers and try figuring out the chord progressions in different keys. Look at the chord progressions of songs that you already know. We've built a few types of triads before. Now, an inversion of this chord is exactly what it might sound like. We invert the notes in the chord and we change their position. We have stacked thirds for this chord right now, but let's take C from the bottom and move it to the top. Now we have the same C major triad, but it's spelled E, G, C. This creates intervals of a minor third and a fourth in the chord. Let's invert that again and we get G, C, E, creating the intervals of a fourth and a major third in the chord. Inversions are a great way to create movement from just one chord. This is because of the way the different intervals are interacting with each other. So don't stick to just one voicing or one grip. Move around, man. Looking at some chord progressions, we might find that it sounds better if we use inversions to move from chord to chord. If we keep large jumps to a minimum and we smooth out the movement of the notes, it sounds hella tight. And that is an honest to goodness quote from Beethoven himself. That is not a joke. Let's take a common progression that we see in a lot of jazz standards, 1, 6, 2, 5. I'm choosing this one because the roots of these chords kind of jump all over the place. In the key of C major, we have our 1 chord, C major. 6 is A minor. 2 is D minor. And 5 is G major. Now, let's spell out the notes for each of these triads. C major, C, E, G. We have A minor, A, C, E, D minor, D, F, A, G major, G, B, D, and then we're back at 1 again with C, E, G. If we look at those notes that are being played, we can see that they're being shared by some of the chords. Some are right next to each other when we move from one chord to another by either a semitone or a tone. Let's invert these triads and try and make some smoother voice leading. E, G, C. That's C major, first inversion. E, A, C. That's A minor, second inversion. F, A, D. That's D minor, first inversion. G, B, D. That's G major, root position. G, C, E. That's C major, second inversion. So let's play this all together here. This gives a different feel to our chord progression altogether. We can really experiment with this by using the different distances in the notes created by these different inversions. We can also try and leverage the distances between the notes in the current chord and the next chord to our advantage. Even more important, we can stay in our lane, so to speak, with our instrument when we're playing with others. Playing chords that are using up such a wide range of frequencies leaves little room for anybody else to fit in. When you're playing as a band, you need to be a unit working together. If one person is taking up all the sound, then they're literally fighting against everyone else they're playing with. You may have heard people referring to a band's performance as being tight. It's not just referring to being well rehearsed or skilled, taking the time to ensure that each member has their own lane and they're not stepping on other band members' toes. It gives the members of the group playing more room to breathe, more room to vibrate. Try this with chord progressions that you already know, working inversions and voice leading into it. See how much of a difference it can make in your sound. Melody is the line of notes that's usually the focus of the song or the hook. It's what the vocalist is singing, or the saxophone is saxing, or the laptop is beep booping. This is the memorable stuff that people want to sing along to. This is just the really nice icing on the cake. A safe strategy and a good one for taking a first pass at a melody is targeting the notes that are in the chord as they come up in the progression. It may fit, but it may not be very interesting. We can use the notes that are in that key that aren't chord tones as passing notes or passing tones to the next chord tone. This helps to create a bit of movement with your melody, and it makes things a bit more interesting. If we wanted to take things a little bit further, we can try experimenting with things. Scale degrees to the rescue. We can think about how our melody note and the notes that we put in the chord. A lot to consider. There will be varying levels of consonance and dissonance based on the notes that you eventually choose for your melody. Dissonance doesn't mean bad, it means tension. How you choose to resolve that tension is everything. We have root and 5 as safe notes. A major third or minor third and a major or minor seventh are color tones. These are telling us more about the chord we are on, whether it's major or minor. 2, 4, and 6 are not totally safe, but they aren't exactly unstable either. They aren't considered primary chord tones, but they do exist in the chord if you continue stacking thirds on top of each other beyond a triad. You may see them written up higher above the octave of the chord as 9, 11, and 13. These are called extensions. We have altered notes and altered extensions. Things like flat 5 or flat 2, which create a lot of tension and instability. Again, not wrong if you know how to resolve them with the next note that you decide to play. Try starting with major or minor pentatonic patterns for your experimenting with melodies. Less notes means less things to keep track of, and the pattern makes sure you are almost always going to land on a correct note. First, we have a standard measure of the beat called a bar. Bars would be like feet or meters. The common time in Western music is having 4 beats per bar. If one note is the full 4 beats or the whole bar, it is a whole note. If the note is 2 beats or half of the bar, it is a half note. If the note is 1 beat, it's 1/4 of the bar, so it's a quarter note. The quarter note is generally considered the pulse of the song. If you've ever heard anybody say that a song is at 100 BPM, or you see tempo markings at the top of sheet music, they refer to how fast the song is played and how many quarter notes are played in a minute. The notes or chords or whatever landing on the 1, 2, 3, 4 would be considered landing on the beat. Like, play this chord on the 1 or clap on 2 and 4. We can get in between these beats with things like 8th notes and 16th notes. The system is just subdividing the bar into slices of time. Eighth notes would be counted 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then we are in the next bar. 16th notes will be counted 1E and a, 2E and a, 3E and a, 4E and a. You can keep subdividing, but you likely won't see too much more than 16th notes, even though they do exist. Now, when it comes to 8th notes and 16th notes, landing your notes or chords or shots on these upbeats, that can make things so much more interesting and exciting than just landing on the beat all the time. This system of counting allows you to accurately keep track of your time and where you are in relation to the beat or the pulse of the song. Focusing on this will make you a wholly different and better player. I can guarantee you this. Music theory is no joke, but neither is the power it can awaken in you and your songwriting. Understanding the subtleties of how this works gives you endless possibilities to choose from. Suddenly, there's no bad songs, just unfinished ones that could use a bit of polish or reworking. Harnessing these valuable foundational concepts is what's going to set you apart from everybody else out there. If you want to get better at playing music for your family and friends, or even just for yourself, please keep getting better. The love of music and knowledge of music should be given to everybody. For those few who are ready to accept the challenge of truly becoming the musician they are supposed to be, what work are you doing to make sure that you will stand out? How will you invest in yourself and your craft and your art? If you'd like to get more in depth with some of these concepts, we're going to be opening up applications for our mentorship and coaching programs that are a bit more personalized. So if you follow the link in the description below, fill out an application form and we'll see if you're a good fit for the program. That's it for me. I have been Dan. This has been a video. We are MFile and you are beautiful. Now go and create the music that you hear in your head.